Well, congratulations to us, because today we finally voted to do exactly that. And let me tell you something about that vote. It was going to be our last one ever. My name is Krell Vox, and I'm what you might call a political observer. That's a fancy way of saying I watch idiots make terrible decisions for a living. For 300 cycles, I have been documenting the rise and fall of civilizations across our galaxy. I have seen species wipe themselves out over the color of their star's light. I have watched empires crumble because someone sneezed during a diplomatic dinner. But what I witnessed today, this topped them all. The Galactic Senate chamber stretched out before me like a massive amphitheater, its bioluminescent walls pulsing with the nervous energy of 1,200 different species. The air recyclers worked overtime, trying to manage the toxic cocktail of atmospheric requirements. Methane breathers sat next to oxygen users, silicon-based life forms clustered near the sulfur delegation. It was like watching a chemistry experiment that could explode at any moment. And at the center of it all sat the humans. 3 of them. Just 3. Against 1,200 of us. Ambassador Elena Vasquez sat perfectly still, her dark eyes scanning the chamber with the kind of calm that made my exoskeleton itch. To her left, military advisor Jake Morrison cracked his knuckles, a sound that somehow carried across the vast space and made several species flinch. To her right, Dr. Priya Singh tapped something into her datapad, occasionally glancing up with what could only be described as amusement. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here we were, about to vote on exterminating the newest member of our galactic community, and they looked like they were waiting for lunch to be served. Senator Theorak of the Zolani Federation called for order, his voice booming through the translation matrix. The motion before us today is Resolution 7749X. Complete sterilization of Sol 3, otherwise known as Earth, and all human colonies throughout the galaxy. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some species clicked their approval. Others released pheromones of satisfaction. The Gorth delegation actually started a low humming that sounded suspiciously like celebration. The humans, Theorak continued, have been members of our community for exactly 47 standard cycles. In that time, they have initiated contact with over 3,000 species, established trade relations with 800 civilizations, and somehow managed to learn to speak fluently in over 2,000 different languages, master the cultural customs of 1,500 societies, and adapt their biology to survive on planets that should have killed them within hours. The Zephyrian representative, a gelatinous blob that communicated through color changes, shifted to a violent shade of red. That's exactly the problem. No species learns that fast. No species adapts that quickly. It's unnatural. A chorus of agreement echoed through the chamber. Tentacles waved, wings flapped, and various appendages gestured frantically. Ambassador Vasquez finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. Senator Theorak, if I may. The chamber fell silent. Even the atmospheric processes seemed to pause. You may, Theorak replied, though his tone suggested he'd rather she didn't. Vasquez stood, her movements fluid and controlled. 47 cycles ago, humanity received first contact from the Altarian scout ship Harmony's Edge. We were told that the galaxy was vast, that countless civilizations thrived among the stars, and that we were invited to join this great galactic community. She gestured to the assembled delegates. We accepted that invitation with hope. We studied your languages because we wanted to speak with you. We learned your customs because we wanted to understand you. We adapted ourselves because we wanted to belong. The Krillian delegate, an insectoid creature with compound eyes, buzzed angrily. You adapted too well. You changed too much. Species don't evolve in mere decades. Dr. Singh looked up from her datapad, and I swear she was smiling. Evolution? Oh, we didn't evolve. The chamber erupted. Delegates leaped from their seats, screaming in dozens of languages. The translation matrix overloaded and started cycling through random phrases. For a moment, chaos reigned. When order was finally restored, Senator Tharek was practically vibrating with fury. "Explain yourself, human." "Gladly," Singh replied, standing up. "We didn't evolve to survive on your worlds. We simply figured out how. When we couldn't breathe your atmosphere, we built better lungs. When your gravity was too strong, we reinforced our bones. When your radiation would kill us, we developed immunity. Humans are quite good at solving problems, you see." The silence that followed was deafening. "You modified yourselves," whispered the ethereal delegate. "A being of pure energy contained in a containment field." "Modified?" Morrison laughed, a sound that somehow conveyed both humor and menace. "We rebuilt ourselves from the ground up. New organs, enhanced immune systems, reinforced skeletal structures, improved neural pathways. Every world we visited, every challenge we faced, we became something better." The Vortanian representative, a crystalline being that communicated through harmonic vibrations, struck a note of pure terror. "That's impossible. Genetic modification on that scale would take millennia." "For most species, yes," Vasquez agreed. "But humans have always been resourceful." "Singh, would you care to share our timeline?" Singh consulted her datapad. "Certainly. Year 1 after first contact, we cracked genetic sequencing for rapid adaptation. Year 3, we developed nanobiological enhancement systems. Year 7, we achieved conscious control over cellular restructuring. Year 15, we began experimenting with—" "Stop," Tharek roared. "This is exactly why you must be destroyed. You advance too quickly. You adapt too efficiently. You are not evolution, you are contamination." The chamber exploded into cacophony again. This time, I noticed something interesting. The smaller species, the ones usually ignored in galactic politics, were unusually quiet. They were watching the humans with something that wasn't fear. It was fascination. When the noise died down, Ambassador Vasquez was still standing, still calm, still waiting. "Senator Tharek," she said quietly, "may I ask a question?" "You may ask," he replied, though his tone suggested she shouldn't expect an answer. "In your research on humanity, did you happen to investigate what we were doing before first contact?" "Of course," Tharek snapped. "Primitive warfare, environmental destruction, tribal conflicts, typical pre-space civilization behavior. And what were we fighting about?" Tharek consulted his notes. "Resources, territory, ideological differences, the usual. How many humans died in our wars? Irrelevant. Humor me." Tharek's crest bristled with annoyance. "Approximately 1.2 billion over the past millennium. And how many humans died in the 47 cycles since joining the galactic community?" "I fail to see." "Zero," Vasquez said quietly. "Zero humans have died in warfare since we joined your community. Do you know what?" The chamber was so quiet I could hear my own circulatory system pumping. "Because," Vasquez continued, "we had something better to fight. We had challenges that required all of humanity working together. We had puzzles to solve, problems to overcome, limits to transcend. You gave us the galaxy, Senator Tharek. You gave us purpose." The Altarian delegate, whose species had made first contact, spoke up. That's not possible. Aggressive species don't just stop being aggressive." Morrison grinned, and several delegates actually recoiled. "Oh, we are still aggressive. We just redirected that aggression toward making ourselves better. Every impossible challenge you threw at us, every environment that should have killed us, every cultural barrier that should have stopped us, we took it personally. And you want to destroy us for succeeding," Singh added, still consulting her datapad. "How very predictable." Tharek's crest was now fully extended in a threat display. "You threaten the natural order. Species that advance too quickly upset the balance." "What balance?" Vasquez asked. "The balance where the strong prey on the weak. Where advanced civilizations strip resources from primitive worlds. Where entire species are enslaved because they can't defend themselves." She gestured to the smaller delegates. How many of the species in this chamber are here by choice, Senator? How many are here because they are strong enough to demand a seat? And how many are here because they are too weak to refuse? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The Muralian delegate, a small furry creature, spoke up in a tiny voice. The Thyrekians strip mine our homeworld. They say it's for the greater good of the galaxy. The Zalani use our people as indentured servants, whispered another small voice. The Gorth harvest our young for their genetic material, came a third. Thyrek slammed his appendage on the podium. Enough. These are necessary arrangements for galactic stability. Necessary for whom? Morrison asked, standing up. Even sitting, he'd been imposing. Standing, he was terrifying. For you? For the species strong enough to take what they want? This is precisely why humanity must be eliminated, Thyrek roared. You upset the natural order. You give the weak ideas. Ideas like hope? Vasquez asked quietly. Ideas like resistance. Thyrek shot back. The silence that followed was different from the others. This wasn't fear or shock. This was understanding. Singh finally looked up from her datapad, and this time she was definitely smiling. Senator Thyrek, before we proceed with this vote, I think there's something you should know. And what's that? We have been monitoring your communications, she said casually. All of them, for the past 47 cycles. We know about the resource extraction agreements, the genetic harvesting operations, the indentured servitude contracts. We know about the puppet governments, the manufactured conflicts, the artificial scarcities. The chamber erupted again. But this time it was different. The smaller species weren't screaming in fear. They were screaming in anger. When order was restored, Singh was still smiling. We also know about the real reason for this vote. There is no other reason. Thyrek insisted. Humanity poses a threat to galactic stability. Oh, we pose a threat, all right, Morrison agreed. But not to stability. We pose a threat to your business model, Singh nodded. You see, when humans adapt to survive on hostile worlds, we tend to share our adaptations. When we solve problems, we share our solutions. When we develop new technologies, we share those too. And when we form alliances, she gestured to the smaller delegates. We share everything. The implications of her words rippled through the chamber like shockwaves. That's impossible, the Krellian delegate buzzed frantically. The smaller species lack the genetic compatibility for human modifications. Not human modifications, Singh corrected. Human-developed modifications, specifically designed for each species' unique biology. We have been quite busy these past few cycles. Thurak's crest was now flashing emergency colors. You can't have, the complexity alone would take. Would take what? Vasquez asked innocently. A few decades. A century at most. Senator, you keep underestimating us. It's becoming a habit. The Moralian delegate spoke up again, but this time her voice was stronger. The humans, they gave us shields, planetary defense grids. Our homeworld is no longer defensible against strip mining operations. They gave us biological independence, added another small voice. We no longer require the Zalani life support systems for our workers. They gave us genetic immunity, came a third voice. The Gorth can no longer harvest our young. The chamber was no longer just noisy. It was in full revolt. Thyrek was frantically gesturing to his allies. But I noticed something interesting. The traditional power blocks were fragmenting. Species that had maintained neutrality for centuries were choosing sides, and they weren't choosing his side. Order, Thyrek bellowed. Order. We will proceed with the vote. Actually, Ambassador Vasquez said quietly, I don't think you will. Her words carried despite the chaos, and gradually the chamber fell silent again. You see, she continued, there's been a small change in the voting procedures. As of this morning, the Galactic Senate operates under new rules. Thyrek's eyes widened. What new rules? Morrison grinned again. The rules that say every species gets one vote. Not every delegate. Every species. The mathematical implications hit the chamber like a physical blow. For centuries, the Galactic Senate had operated on a system where voting power was proportional to military and economic strength. The 12 major powers controlled roughly 80% of all votes. The remaining 20% was split among hundreds of smaller species. But if every species got exactly one vote, there are approximately 847 species represented in this chamber, Singh announced, still reading from her datapad. Of those, 12 are what you might call major powers. The remaining 835, well, let's call them highly motivated to change the current system. Tharak was beyond fury now. He was in full panic mode. You can't change the voting system. That requires a supermajority of the current Senate. Which we got, Vasquez said calmly. This morning, while you were preparing your extermination resolution, we were preparing our voting reform resolution. Turns out, when you give people hope, they become remarkably motivated to vote for change. The chamber wasn't chaotic anymore. It was electric. 800 small species were looking at 12 large ones, and for the first time in galactic history, the numbers were in their favor. This is illegal, Tharak screamed. This is insurrection. This is democracy, Morrison replied. You should try it sometime. But Tharak wasn't finished. He was reaching for something at his podium, something that made several species recoil in terror. If we cannot eliminate humanity through legal means, he announced, then we will eliminate them through other methods. Authorization code, Omega 7749. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Singh looked up from her datapad one final time, and her smile was absolutely terrifying. Oh, Senator, she said quietly, you really shouldn't have done that. What happened next would be remembered as the moment everything changed. But that's a story for another time, because right now, in this moment, as Tharak reached for his emergency protocols and the chamber held its breath, Ambassador Vasquez did something that no one expected. She laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not a desperate laugh, a genuinely amused laugh. Senator Tharak, she said, still chuckling, would you like to know what humanity's greatest adaptation has been? Our most important modification, the one that makes us truly dangerous to your kind. Tharak's hand froze over his controls. We learned to think like you, she said quietly. We learned to plan like you. We learned to anticipate like you. And then we learned to do it better. The chamber was so quiet I could hear my own thoughts. Authorization code Omega 7749. Singh read from her datapad, is the emergency protocol for activating the Tharakian battle fleet currently stationed at the edge of this system. 12 dreadnoughts, 48 cruisers, and approximately 200 support vessels. Tharak's crest went from red to white. How do you know your codes? Morrison finished. Same way we know everything else. We have been listening. We have been learning. We have been preparing. Vasquez stepped forward. The question isn't whether you will activate your fleet, Senator. The question is whether you will survive the activation. The lights in the chamber suddenly dimmed, and every delegate's personal communication device began receiving the same message simultaneously. Singh's voice echoed through the translation matrix as she read aloud. Message from the human colonial fleet to all Galactic Senate members. We are currently monitoring 47 different battle groups, positioned throughout the galaxy. All major military installations are under observation. All command structures are identified. All communication networks are infiltrated. This is not a threat. This is a statement of fact. The chamber erupted one final time, but this wasn't chaos. This was panic. As delegates scrambled for their emergency protocols and communication devices, as the great powers of the galaxy realized that the balance of power had shifted beneath their feet, as the smaller species began to understand that they were no longer alone, I realized something important. The humans hadn't just adapted to survive in our galaxy, they had adapted to replace us. And honestly, after watching this vote, after seeing how we treated those who couldn't defend themselves, after witnessing the casual cruelty of our natural order, I was starting to think that might not be such a bad thing. But that's just the beginning of this story. Because what happened next when those authorization codes were finally entered, when the fleets began to move, when humanity showed the galaxy exactly what they meant by adapt, well, that's when things got really interesting. You want to know what happened when Senator Thrak entered those authorization codes? Let me paint you a picture of the most spectacular military failure in galactic history. And trust me, I have seen some doozies. The moment Thrak's claws hit the activation sequence, every screen in the Senate chamber lit up with tactical displays. Not our screens, mind you. The humans had apparently decided we all needed a front row seat to watch their masterpiece unfold. Thrakian Battle Group Alpha, came a crisp voice through the communication system. This is Admiral Sarah Martinez, aboard the human vessel Unconventional Wisdom. You are ordered to stand down immediately. Thrak's crest was cycling through colors I didn't even know existed. This is impossible. Our fleet is cloaked. Our position is classified beyond top secret. Morrison leaned back in his chair, still grinning. Senator, your cloaked fleet has been broadcasting its position for the past 6 months. We have been using your ships for target practice. Well, not literally. That would be rude. On the tactical display, I watched 12 massive Thrakian dreadnoughts suddenly appear as red dots. Surrounding them, like predators circling wounded prey, were blue dots. Lots and lots of blue dots. Thrakian Battle Group Alpha, Admiral Martinez continued. You are surrounded by 48 human vessels. Our weapons are locked onto your position. You have 30 seconds to comply. The Thrakian fleet commander's voice crackled through the speakers, speaking in rapid, panicked clicks. The translator rendered it as unknown vessels. Identify yourselves. How did you penetrate our defensive perimeter? We didn't penetrate it, came the response. We have been inside it for 3 weeks. We were wondering when you'd notice. I have to admit, watching Thrak's face during this exchange was almost worth the price of admission. His entire worldview was collapsing in real time. This is Admiral Kess of the Thrakian Imperial Navy, the fleet commander finally managed. You are violating sovereign space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. There was a pause. Then Admiral Martinez spoke again, and I swear I could hear the smile in her voice. Admiral Kess, this is Admiral Martinez. I believe we met at the Centauri Peace Conference 2 cycles ago. You said humans would never amount to anything militarily. Remember that conversation? Another pause. Oh no. Oh yes. Martinez replied cheerfully. Would you like to see what we have amounted to? What happened next was like watching a masterclass in psychological warfare. The human ships didn't fire a single shot. Instead, they began a synchronized dance around the Thrakian fleet that was equal parts beautiful and terrifying. The blue dots on the tactical display moved in perfect formation, weaving between the red dots with impossible precision. They were showing off. They were demonstrating that they could go anywhere, do anything, and the mighty Thrakian fleet couldn't stop them. Impossible, Admiral Kess whispered. Ships cannot maneuver like that. The gravitational stresses alone should tear your hulls apart. Should, Martinez agreed. But we adapted. Funny thing about humans, Admiral. Tell us something is impossible, and we take it as a personal challenge. Senator Thrak was frantically trying to contact other battle groups, but every time he opened a channel, a human voice would politely interrupt. Zelani Task Force Beta, this is Captain James O'Brien aboard the Murphy's Law. Beautiful day for a surrender, don't you think? Gorth Assault Squadron, this is Commander Lisa Park aboard the Probable Cause. We have been analyzing your formation patterns. Very traditional. Very predictable, very surrounded. Krillian Defense Grid, this is Colonel Michael Torres, aboard the Unintended Consequences. We count 47 orbital platforms. We count 48 of our ships. Math is fun, isn't it? I was keeping track, and the numbers were staggering. 47 major battle groups, hundreds of ships, thousands of weapons platforms, all of them discovered, all of them surrounded, all of them utterly helpless. The smaller species in the chamber were no longer cowering, they were cheering. How? Thyrak finally managed. How did you build a fleet this size without anyone noticing? Ambassador Vasquez stood up, brushing invisible dust from her uniform. Senator, you keep asking the wrong questions. The question isn't how we built this fleet. The question is when. She gestured to the tactical displays surrounding us. Every ship you are seeing was built in the first 10 cycles after we joined the galactic community. While you were congratulating yourselves on humanity's rapid adaptation, we were preparing for the day you'd try to kill us for it. Dr. Singh consulted her ever-present datapad. Initial construction began in Cycle 3, when we realized the galactic community wasn't nearly as welcoming as advertised. Full production started in Cycle 7, when we identified the pattern of species that had mysteriously disappeared after rapid advancement. We achieved full operational capacity in Cycle 23. 23 cycles ago, the ethereal delegate flickered with confusion. But your fleet technology is beyond anything we have seen. That's because you have been looking in the wrong places, Morrison replied. You have been monitoring our colonies, our trade routes, our diplomatic channels. You never thought to check the places we told you not to go. Vasquez nodded. Radiation zones, unstable star systems, planets with hostile atmospheres. You know, all the places that would kill any sane species instantly. All the places, Singh added with a grin, that are perfectly safe once you adapt to survive anywhere. The full implications of what they were saying hit me like a cargo hauler. While the galaxy's major powers had been congratulating themselves on keeping humanity in check, the humans had been building the largest fleet in galactic history in places no one else could even visit. This is madness, Thyrak roared. The resources alone, the manufacturing capacity, the logistics. Oh, that's the beautiful part, Morrison said, standing up and walking to one of the tactical displays. We didn't build this fleet alone. He pressed something on the display, and suddenly it was showing ship classifications I'd never seen before. Human vessels, yes, he continued, but crewed by volunteers from 835 different species, equipped with technology developed by the greatest minds from across the galaxy, powered by resources freely given by worlds that were tired of being strip-mined and exploited. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of what had been happening became clear. This wasn't just humanity preparing for war. This was the largest alliance in galactic history, built in secret, right under the noses of the major powers. Every species you have oppressed, Vasquez said quietly. Every world you have exploited, every people you have enslaved. They have all been waiting for someone strong enough to stand up to you. Turns out, they just needed someone crazy enough to try. Admiral Martinez's voice crackled through the speakers again. All battle groups, report status. A cascade of voices began reporting in Task Force Alpha. All targets secured. Battle Group 7. Enemy fleet neutralized without firing a shot. Deep Strike Squadron. Orbital platforms are standing down. Reconnaissance Division. All communication networks are under our control. It went on and on. 47 different engagements, and every single one had ended the same way. Complete human victory without a single shot fired. How? Thyrak whispered. How did you coordinate something like this? The communication networks alone, Senator, Singh said patiently. We have been monitoring your communications for 47 cycles. Did you really think we couldn't build our own? She tapped her datapad, and suddenly every delegate in the chamber received a message simultaneously. But this wasn't coming through the galactic communication network. This was something else entirely. Quantum entanglement communication, Singh explained casually. Instantaneous, undetectable, impossible to intercept. We have had every ship in our fleet connected to every other ship for the past 20 cycles. Morrison was still grinning. Turns out, when you give a species that's really good at solving problems a really big problem to solve, we get creative. But Thyrak wasn't finished. Desperation had set in. and desperate beings do stupid things. If we cannot defeat you militarily, he announced, reaching for another control, then we will activate the final protocol. Scorched Earth authorization. If the galaxy will not remain under proper control, then there will be no galaxy left to control. Every delegate in the chamber recoiled in horror. The Scorched Earth protocol was the ultimate weapon, designed to destabilize stars and render entire systems uninhabitable. It was the kind of weapon you built hoping you'd never have to use it. Senator, Vasquez said quietly, I really wouldn't do that if I were you. Why not? Thyrak snarled. Because you will stop me. Your precious fleet is scattered across the galaxy. You cannot possibly reach all the activation sites in time. You are right, she agreed. We can't reach all the activation sites. Her smile was absolutely terrifying. Because we are already there. The tactical displays changed again, showing a new set of locations: deep space installations, hidden weapons platforms, secret research facilities. The Scorched Earth network that the major powers had spent millennia building, thinking it was their ultimate insurance policy. Every single installation was highlighted in blue. Facility Omega Prime, came a voice through the speakers. This is Lieutenant Commander Rosa Delacroix. Aboard the constructive criticism. Your doomsday device has been disabled. Have a nice day. Installation Nexus 7, came another voice. This is Major David Kim, aboard the aggressive negotiations. Your planet killer is now a very expensive paperweight. Thank you for your cooperation. It continued for several minutes. Every single Scorched Earth facility, neutralized. Every ultimate weapon, disabled. Every final contingency, rendered useless. Impossible, Thyrak breathed. Those locations are classified beyond classification. They exist in dimensions that don't officially exist. They do now, Singh said cheerfully. We have been mapping parallel dimensions for the past 15 cycles. Turns out, interdimensional physics is just another problem to solve. Morrison was studying the tactical displays with professional interest. You know what's funny? You spent so much time building weapons to destroy the galaxy, you forgot to build weapons to defend it. What do you mean? Demanded the Krillian delegate. Vasquez walked to the center of the chamber. What he means is this. While you were preparing for the day you might have to destroy everything rather than lose control, we were preparing for the day we might have to save everything despite your best efforts. She gestured to the displays around us. Every ship in our fleet, every volunteer from every oppressed world, every alliance we have built over the past 47 cycles. None of it was built for conquest. She paused, letting her words sink in. It was built for protection. The chamber was silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems. You want to know humanity's greatest adaptation? Vasquez continued. It's not our technology. It's not our military prowess. It's not even our ability to survive in impossible conditions. She looked directly at Thyrak. It's our ability to make friends. The truth of it hit me like a revelation. Every species that had been oppressed, exploited, or enslaved, every world that had been strip-mined or conquered, every people that had been forced into servitude or compliance. They had all been waiting for someone to offer them an alternative, and humanity had offered them hope. This is still illegal, Thyrak protested, but his voice was weak now. You cannot simply overthrow the established order. We are not overthrowing anything, Morrison replied. We are just rearranging it a bit. Singh looked up from her datapad, one final time. The Galactic Senate will continue to exist. Democracy will be preserved. Trade will continue. Diplomacy will flourish. She paused. The only thing that's changing is who gets to make the decision. The vote that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. 835 species voting as one. Not for conquest, not for revenge, but for change. Resolution 7749X. The motion to exterminate humanity was defeated by a margin of 835 to 12. Resolution 7750A. The motion to restructure galactic society based on principles of equality and mutual aid passed by the same margin. Resolution 7751B. The motion to establish humanitarian protocols for all member species passed unanimously. Even the 12 major powers voted in favor, though they looked like they were swallowing poison. As the votes were tallied, and the new Galactic Charter was ratified, I realized something important. This wasn't the end of galactic civilization. It was the beginning of a better one. The major powers would adapt. They always did. Some would find ways to thrive in the new system. Others would struggle. A few might even try to resist. But they would all learn the same lesson that had been taught today. Underestimate humanity at your own peril. As the Senate session ended, and delegates began filing out, I overheard Ambassador Vasquez speaking quietly with some of the smaller species representatives. The transition won't be easy, she was saying. There will be challenges. There will be setbacks. There will be those who try to return to the old ways. But we will face them together, replied the Miralian delegate, her voice strong now. All of us. All of us. Vasquez agreed. I was packing up my recording equipment when Senator Thyrek approached me. His crest was no longer flashing angry colors. Now it was a dull, defeated gray. Observer Vox, he said quietly, you have documented the rise and fall of civilizations for 3 centuries. In your professional opinion, what have we witnessed here today? I considered the question carefully. Senator, in all my years of observation, I have seen species destroyed by external threats, internal conflicts, and natural disasters. But today is the first time I have seen a species destroyed by their own success. Success? He asked, confused. You succeeded in creating exactly the enemy you feared. I explained. You were so afraid of humanity's potential that you forced them to realize it. You were so concerned about them upsetting the balance of power that you gave them every reason to do exactly that. I gestured toward the departing human delegation. They didn't start this conflict, Senator. They just finished it. As I watched the humans leave, surrounded by representatives from hundreds of grateful species, I couldn't help but reflect on the irony of it all. The Galactic Senate had voted to exterminate humanity because they were afraid of what humans might become. Turns out, they were right to be afraid. They just should have been afraid 47 cycles earlier. The galaxy had changed forever today. The age of the major powers was ending, and the age of cooperation was beginning. It would be messy. It would be complicated. It would be full of challenges and setbacks and unexpected complications. In other words, it would be perfectly human and honest. After watching the old system in action for 3 centuries, I was looking forward to seeing what the new one could accomplish. After all, if there's one thing humans are good at, it's solving problems. Even problems as big as an entire galaxy. Even problems like us.